Okay, so I'd like to start with this code. Every computer language out there helps to do something you want to do, and you can do with any language. You can write something on PHP, you can write something on any other language that you like to do what you want to do. But the difference lies which makes it easier to do it. So that's where the real difference lies, correct? So any common thing between these languages? What do you think is more common between these stuffs, languages or the frameworks? What is the most common thing here? Sorry? Somebody said something. No? Any guesses? Wild guesses? Just think of all those different things. What combines this thing? What is the common thing for across all the frameworks or the languages or something that I have listed over there? Sorry? Hipster? Okay, when they came in, they are hipster. Okay, I do agree with that. What else?
They're open source.
Yes, okay, you can say they are open source.
Language.
Sorry?
Language.
None of them is language, I guess. Everything is a framework. If I do it correctly, everything is a framework. The most common thing is like they all made it very easy to get started. Remember seeing the demo from the Ruby on Rails creator? He did create a blog application within 15 minutes, and that looked like an awesome thing to do. And all those frameworks that you have seen there, it makes it really easy to get started. With that, welcome to Blueprints and JHipster. So a little bit about me. I'm Sendil Kumar. You can reach me at my Twitter handle, Sendil Kumarian. I do a little bit of open source. I'm passionate about open source. You can see me contributing to JHipster, Webpack. Any Webpack fans here? Nobody? One? Yay. And I'm also doing Kotlin Hipster, and that's a brand new logo that we have for Kotlin Hipster. And I'm also doing a bit on WebAssembly, and if you guys are interested in Rust, WebAssembly, or how to do WASI and things like that, hit me out outside. We can talk about that. Okay, so in this conference, I'm pretty much sure that I can say this sentence and go out without hurting anybody's feeling. So I think everybody loves JHipster, right? Is there someone who hates JHipster here? If else, we'll meet outside. The main reason why we love JHipster is like it makes it really easy. It makes it really easy for a front-end developer to understand how to architect a back-end system, or a back-end developer to architect the front-end system with multiple different frameworks, multiple different packages that are getting released. It makes it really easy for them. On the other hand, it makes it really, what we create is robust, and the application that you're generating is production ready from day one. It's well tested, battle tested by the community, as well as everything that we are creating has more than 80% test coverage. That's also one of the awesome things, right? So it is very robust. And it's much more faster. For you to faster to get into production, for you to get started and do stuffs with JHipster, much more higher. And the faster here also represent that you just have to concentrate on how to architect or how to convert your ideas into products, rather than thinking how to set up the entire architecture, how to make your backend to talk with the front end, how to do the CORS and things like that. So all those things are handled by JHipster. That's one other thing. It makes it really faster. And of course, it saves time, right? How many of you agree to this fact? It saves time, right? So for everyone here, it saves time. This is the installs per year that we have in JHipster. And you can see how this actually increasing year on year. We are currently at around 2.2 million installs. And for 2019, I just projected it. Currently, we have around 560K. And I'm just projecting that for the next year and round it off to 1 million. So we will definitely hit 1 million installs just on this year. For a library, it makes sense. But for a framework that we are doing, reaching this amount of 2.2 million installs is a huge thing. And of course, we have 510 contributors to the main project, and I haven't calculated the other projects, other sub-projects and things like that. Just for the generated JHipster, we have 510 contributors. Thanks to each and every one. Without you guys, it is not possible that we have achieved something like this. It's really awesome. Thank you again. Also, I have seen a PhD from another person who said like there is a 26K combination for generating an application with JHipster. So it's a huge number of stuff, right? So you can do a lot of things with JHipster. There are numerous options on doing the front end, numerous options on selecting the back end. You have Spring Boot, that's one framework that we use, but you can go for a microservice, you can go for a monolith application, and then UAA servers, and a lot of different add-ons on top of it. So that makes it really flexible and increases the number of options that we have. But what it ended up doing is it bloated the core of our application. So the generator itself is built on top of EJS, right? So it bloated the core of our templates. So we have templates, and these templates are bloated now. Like if you want to go ahead and add something here, it's really not possible to get started from day one. So this is a sample thing that we have, like our generator. This is how it's structured. And as you can see here, it has like 61K lines of code. And it's very difficult for anybody who just goes inside the application and tries to do something with the JHipster application. Because for initial contributors, it makes it really difficult to understand how to do and what to do, where to do, things like that. That's a big problem that we have currently. And this kind of decreases our innovation speed, right? And being a JHipster or being a hipster makes it like we are engulfing a newer technologies that is coming into the market, but having a bloated core actually decreases the speed in which we innovate. So that's a problem. And finding something and then trying to fix certain things in the core application is much more complicated. The rate at which the software is getting innovated currently is growing exponentially, which means that we also have to grow faster. So in order to newer technologies to come into the picture or come into our application, we have to support them inside, but supporting them inside is a problem that we have. So because it's impossible to maintain. So what we did is like the clear answer for this picture is creating JHipster Blueprints. That's why we have blueprints here. So blueprints kind of removes, like you don't need to have to touch your bloated core and then do everything there. You just have to plug that as a pluggable architecture, write your own custom code there and use that. So that's where blueprints come into picture. Of course, you all know the JHipster is built on top of human generator. Is there someone who don't know about it? Okay. How this human generator works? Initially it asks you a bunch of questions, right? Like it says some prompts, just go ahead and answer those questions. It takes all those answers and then goes and applies those answers to the templates that we have and creates a project. That's how the JHipster works. So you have multiple entry points here, like you can just create a server, just create an entity, just create a client, or you can combine all those things and create a chain towards it. That's how this entire JHipster is built. But how does a blueprint help here? How does a blueprint help here? What do you think an ideal way of having a blueprint here? Answers? No? So silent, huh? It helps you to customize things. For example, you can just go ahead and remove the client that we're generating, add your own client. You can just remove the entity and add your own entity. Or remove the server, add your own server. Or else you can combine all these three things and create your own generator, and it just builds on the fact that it is generated by JHipster. The entire human generator that JHipster runs, it kind of wires this entire thing and creates an application for you. What we can achieve with that is it has a much lesser code to maintain. So you just have fewer lines of code, which is custom code for you, and you can maintain that very easily. And if you're putting that into open source, and if you're trying to create a blueprint out of that, and it really makes it simple, and again, JHipster supports those applications for you. And it also leads to a faster innovation. We were able to build Vue.js blueprint much quicker. We were able to build Kotlin blueprint much quicker, and things like that. So it kind of helps you to innovate much more faster, and you can add a lot of new technologies. Of course, we have to be hipster, right? So being hipster. So I'm introducing you Kotlin Hipster, and that's a new logo. And version 1 I just released. How you can do it? You just go ahead and run JHipster --blueprint Kotlin. Or you can use KHipster, which is a CLI wrapper around the JHipster --blueprint. Instead of typing this entire string that we have here, you just go ahead and run KHipster, which kind of generates the application. Just before we're going there, let's go and see how this wrapper works. I'm just creating an app one. All you have to do is run KHipster. That's it. So what it does, nothing. It just goes ahead and then calls the JHipster that is running beneath. the generator, that's it. It doesn't do anything else. And you can also see that it supports all the things that we have. For example, JHipster-h gives you all the help related stuffs that we have. So it's like just a wrapper around the JHipster library. That's it. So moving on to the slides. Why Kotlin? Any Kotlin fans in the house? Ooh, okay, we have many. Why Kotlin? Now you have to answer. All those people who raised hands. It's cool, yeah. Less lines of code, correct? Yep, null safety, but that's a pain sometimes. Yeah. Any other? It's cooler, that's bigger thing. But for us, when we moved to Kotlin Hipster, that was the main point because we have something in Java and you can do 100% Java interoperability with Kotlin. And that was a huge success for us. So that was the huge thing that we took it forward and tried to create a JHipster application. This is a Spring Boot application that we are creating with Java. And this is in Kotlin. It's much more concise, much more clear. Number of lines remain the same, right? Yeah. But the verbose thing that you're doing, for example, the public static void main, is not there. You just have fun. It's clear code, it's clean code that you can use, and that's really easier to understand. And the functions are fun. By the fact that we just defined fun for the functions, it's fun-filled functions. And data classes are much more easier to write. We will see the data classes as well as the functions later when we are creating an application with Kotlin Hipster. And this is another important thing. So I think it's not so, is it visible? Is it okay? Yeah, so as you can see here, we are at the start of Kotlin Hipster, just like version 1 that's released. And as you can see here, the Java code has more lines than compared with the Kotlin code. All the remaining things almost remain the same. So it kind of reduces the amount of code that you have to think about. That's one of the major things. But the other advantage of using a Kotlin over here is that you have this transition period. At this moment, the Kotlin code heavily relies on how we write Java. So as a Java developer, how you understand Java, how you can write Java, we have written it that way, which makes it kind of bigger, like 7,000 lines that we have currently, but we can reduce that even further. If you just go to Kotlin-based syntax, we can just go to 5K lines per doing that stuff. That's much more easier and clear and concise code, and you have much lesser code to worry about. So those are the few things. So let's go for the Kotlin ride. So as you can see here, to generate an application, all I have to do is like run JHipster, and it has the same set of questions that it is going to have. Monolith application, let's give a name to it. Okay, so it says it cannot find an application. Okay. So it's my development environment. I just have to link this guy here, and then I can run JHipster again. Yes, so monolith, JHipster. Of course, it took the generator now, so all the other things that will be generated here will be a Kotlin-based generator stuff. So I'm just going to select all the basic options here. Hopefully everybody knows this thing, right? So I'm just going to storm through it. I'm just using an Angular here, default version, all those things default. Just going and creating an application. So let me jump into the code. So as you can see here, it's again the same Spring Boot application that would be generated with Java, but the only difference is like you have SRC main Kotlin, which has everything in Kotlin. That's a basic difference. So as you can see here, the functions are so concise. So you can see it's much more simpler, much more lesser lines of code, and it's very expressive. That's another term that you can use for using Kotlin, and all those functions are fun to write. And you don't have any type definition, you don't have any semicolons there, and all those things are removed for you. And this is what I meant, like we have written few things that are more similar to Java, because basically we are in the transitioning period, but in the future we might see this thing getting changed into much more concise code. So that's the reason why we have null checks. And as you can see here, the data classes are pretty easy to write. And this is more verbose version of data classes, again, because we are doing transitioning from Java to Kotlin, but it's more verbose, but it still defines a point, and it's much more easier to do. And all you have to do is like have these 3 functions or 2 functions to have some manual stuffs inside your code. That's how we are generating the application. Again, the beans that we have here, similar but with Kotlin, and also it helps you to do all those things much more clearer. So let's go and start this guy. But this is not something that you expect, right? You obviously know the advantages of Kotlin. You obviously know how it helps you to do stuff much more easier. But how can you generate a blueprint itself all by yourself? That would be one of the questions, right? So let's go back to the code that we have and see how this entire architecture is fitted together. So obviously, the generator JHipster has a folder called generators in which you have all your templates. So this is where all your templates lives. And as for this Kotlin generator, we have to override 4 parts of the template. One is server, the Spring controller and Spring service, and the entity server. So these are the 4 things that you're gonna change. And inside the server, you have this index where everything starts. So basically your application comes and checks this file, and the very first thing that it does is like after running a constructor, it goes and initializes all the constants that is required for project generation. Once it is done, it goes and prompts everything. The prompts that you see in the front page, like what kind of application that you want to do, what kind of names that you want to give. It goes again and says prompting. And we're just using an extension principle here. We're just importing the base generator and using that prompts. That's it. We're just overriding it. We're not doing anything fancy there. The configuration side, whatever answers that you give, it takes all those answers and configures and have it in a central store. And default is something, it's just for adding a face inside, so that's where we have default. But one other thing that we have done is write files. This is where the actual work is done. This is where you're actually generating the files that you have. So here I manually customized it to the write files that I'm going to have, because I'm going to write Kotlin files, not the Java files. So this write files is basically in this files direct files page, files JavaScript module. I'm just going inside here. This is a huge file. But as you can see here, what it does, it has a constants, which is the server files. This basically lists down an array or object which contains all the files that you're going to write here. And this is a function write files. And it returns, it has like list of functions inside. That's it. So it first sets up the environment. It just creates all those directories that you want to do, that you want to create your files into, things like that. And then it cleans up any old files that you have and then write files to disk. That's the main function that's getting called. And this basic thing has a list of things. Like, for example, in the server files, you have the build, resource, configuration stuff, gateway, microservice, and all those things. So what we are trying to do here is like we are trying to minimize the number of things that we have to do. For example, the base server file has something like Docker, and we are just going to use the Docker files from the basic generator. We are not going to override that thing. So what you can do is like you can just export that particular value and use the JavaScript spread operator notation, which means all the things that you define in this object will be taken into consideration. All those things that you didn't define in this object will be taken from the base file that you're represented here. So that's how object representation works, right? So it just uses all those things and then creates an application for you. And that's basically it. Once it creates an application, it goes ahead and checks whether it's a Maven or Gradle build. If it's a Gradle, I just add my Gradle dependencies. For Gradle, it's much more easier because Gradle actually you can have plugins and also create different files for different stuffs. So which means like I just have to create a file called Kotlin Gradle, which is inside the template. I just have this file. So I just have to add this file in my project at any location, and it kind of helps me out to do everything. But on the other hand, for Maven, I cannot use this plugging principle, right? I just have one pom.xml, right? How many of you are Maven fans here? Few of them. Okay. So for Maven, it's very difficult to extend something because, okay, you can put anything that you're going to define, any libraries that you're going to add, you have to put it inside that pom.xml. So what we have to do, we have to like find a way to do it. We have something called needles in JHipster app. Needles or something where you inject something Like for example, if you have an entity, you want to add a new entity, JHipster uses needles, which is like some commands that you have it, and it just finds the text and puts the text inside. That's how it works. But adding a needle for this thing will not work for a longer term, because we might want to have a new dependency, or we might want to have a new execution principle for the Maven and POM XML. So what we can do, I just created a text here. This is complete text. It has nothing. It just specifies the place where the Kotlin files live and the parameters that I need for it to execute. And what I'm trying to do is, like, instead of adding a needle to it, I'm just taking a particular function. I'm just trying to parse this pom.xml, and then I'm just finding a place where I have to plug in certain things, and I'm just putting it inside here. That's normal manipulation of text. That's what is happening. So you can use needles if you have something that you think it's more generic and you want to add it to the system. You can use needles. But on the other hand, you again have something like parser. You just parse this entire thing and put your content inside that stuff and then recreate the file. And that is also another option that you can do when you're generating a new file. So that's how it works. And of course, how many of you know about KT-lint? Anybody heard about KT-lint? No, KT-lint. No? KT-lint is something like prettier for JavaScript and Java. KT-lint kind of helps you to lint your Kotlin files. It also detects any problem that you have in the Kotlin files. So you can add that into your build system, and then that works completely together in your build system. So my application is running, and it just has the same thing, whatever we have. And I'll just show you the KT-lint stuff here. Yes, somewhere here. Yep. So KT-lint plugin, so it checks for a Java directory. If it is present, it's not present, we just have a Kotlin directory. And then it goes ahead and checks for any errors that you might have inside the directory. We don't have any, so that's why it's not printed anything. We have it. We are not in a verbose mode, so it's not printed here. But this is how it checks. So on the compile time, just like any of the JavaScript libraries that you might have, like Prettier and things like that, that helps you to lint your files on the go, you can do the same thing with KT-lint. And that's one of the good advantage that we have with that. So it's the same application that boots up. It looks almost identical. It looks exactly the same, but the backend is completely written in Kotlin. That's the difference. Let me go back to slides. Yes. So, any ideas that you get after seeing how Kotlin Hipster works? What do you think would be a future component that we can add inside the system? Functional bean definition. It's called as foo, right? Okay, great. Functional bean definition. Kotlin in the front end. Yes, you can do it, but it's very difficult to maintain. Any other ideas? I think Julian said a couple of things today morning too, in the keynote. No? You can add in Scala, right? How many of you are Scala fans here? Nobody? Okay, one. Functional beans, Scala, does it rhyme? Okay, so you can add Scala. How many of you heard about Tailwind CSS? Front-end devs here. Nobody? No front-end developers here? Ooh, okay. So Tailwind CSS is something that is kind of changes everything with respect to Bootstrap. We all love Bootstrap because it's much more simpler, and all the applications that we generate currently have Bootstrap. But Bootstrap uses component styles, but a Tailwind CSS is just its CSS. It has nothing inside, just CSS, and it's really awesome. If you want to check it out, give it a try. Svelte. What is that? A new framework, yeah. Yes. And they also argue Svelte is much more faster than the vanilla JavaScript and vanilla HTML. And that's something that you have to check. It's really, really fast. And it's created by Rich Harris, who's doing Rollup plugin too. But it's really fast. We can change the Vue.js part into Svelte, and it really becomes the fastest thing that we have. Micronaut. I think everybody knows about Micronaut, right? So the Micronaut team was also interested in doing this thing, so we can start doing something on Micronaut or QUARKUS. So what we can do here is like these are like much more higher complex than compared with writing something like a CSS changes. But this Micronaut and QUARKUS requires a lot of time and a lot of effort to do this and bring that into a production ready application. One problem that we faced when we are trying to generate Kotlin Hipster is basically the main generator is getting changed a lot. And there are like huge set of contributors who are contributing to that project, and it's getting changed every day. And it's very difficult to cope up with the changes. And that's the main problem that we had. What approach did we take to make sure that we are making it quieter and much more easier? We fixed on a version, and then we developed everything for that version, and then progressively increase our generators range from that version to the other versions. And that's one thing that you can do. For example, in QUARKUS and Micronaut, you just have to create a sample application at first, and then probably you can progressively enhance those applications such that you can add a lot of things further later. But you have to pinpoint to a version to which you're going to support, because the main generator is updating like a crazy stuff. And you can have many more. We can have a Flutter-based mobile front end. We can have a lot of things. Whatever new technologies that come in, we can add a blueprint for that, and it kind of helps you to understand the technology. One, you can learn the technology. Number two, it also helps the community to grow with you, understanding or implementing those technologies. But how will you generate a blueprint? Is there a bigger process that we have to generate a blueprint? Question. It's a question. Yes? No? The effort that you're going to put is definitely huge, because you have to spend a lot of time to understand how this entire thing works. And also, you have to spend a lot of time to cope up with the main generation stuff. But you can generate a blueprint much more easier. How we can do it? Let me go back here. Let me make a directory. Let me call it as Flutter backend, Flutter front end. So I have here, and then I can just go and install npm fng. Hope I have something here. No. Come on. Leave it. npm, sorry, I forgot the command. No. Okay, so we have a generator for that. Let me go and search it. Generator, blueprint. I have to add another keyword here. Back here, all you have to do is, okay, it's npm install -g generator -jhipster -blueprint, and all you have to do is like, okay, I have to run it with yo, and the blueprint name, JHipster Blueprint. So this is a library that we have. All you have to do is like run yo JHipster Blueprint, and it basically again uses human generator, and it asks you a set of questions just like good old times, and you just have to select it here. So I just say Flutter, the description of your module, some Flutter app, and here it asks you which subgenerators that you're actually going to touch. So probably you might want to see client changes, you might want to see entity client changes, and that's it. So I just select these two, and it asks you about username, first name, last name, your email address, just to generate this application or package JSON information, the homepage URL, what license do you want to add. Let me say this one now, and it generates everything for me. So basically what it does is like it generates the particular generator folder where my templates will live in, and since I've selected only client and entity client, it generated that entity client and things like that. So you just have to go and change these things. And basically here it asks for It creates you all the functions that you want, the prompting and things like that. You just go ahead and use those things. So for example, in index.js, initializing is there. It just calls a super initializing. Prompting is there. It just calls a super prompting, which is the base generators prompting. Or else you can add your custom function. We also have that commented there, which means you can just uncomment and use these things. So which makes it much more easier to generate blueprints. So next time when you're trying to generate a blueprint, you can just go and touch those things and then create a blueprint out of it. That's the basic thing that we have. And once you have created the blueprint and all those things, all you basically have to do is like yarn install or install all those dependencies that you have, and then link this thing, and then go to your application and use this linking stuff. The reason why we have Kotlin Hipster using JHipster as a CLI command line, because you can actually remove this particular step. You don't need to install the JHipster generator itself. You can just use this particular CLI file to override that thing, and it kind of does everything for you. Now, the ideal way of running it is JHipster blueprint saying flutter, which means like you're invoking a JHipster application that goes and invokes the blueprint application, and the blueprint application, it generates everything and comes back to the JHipster application, and then it goes back there. So that's how this entire thing works. But when you have your own CLI, what it does is like you just hit your application, and that goes and uses JHipster, get the information, does all the things that you want to do, and returns it to your application, and your application returns things. So you can have that flexibility of control over there. So that is one thing that you can have. But how can you write that CLI stuff? It's very simple. Just an index file. I'm just listing it as JHipster. The very first thing that you have to do is like in the package JSON, you just have to say binary. It's a binary, and it points to this particular command value, and it points to this JavaScript file. So when you run JHipster, it kind of runs node yo JHipster. That's how it translates. And inside the JHipster.js, you have list of things, and all I'm doing is like calling this require CLI. And require CLI, it goes and calls the particular version of JHipster command. That's it. It runs human generated. It kind of wrap around the wrapper and a wrapper on top of it. So that's how it completely configured. So that's basically it. Let's try to make JHipster more awesome by adding a lot of blueprints on top of it. And we also propel creators faster towards their solution. We help them to make their ideas, convert their ideas into awesome applications. Let's hack and have fun. Questions? Yes?
About the blueprint, how much effort you need to if you write a blueprint, to maintain on JHipster upgrades, versions, and so on, how much effort to maintain it?
Okay, so how much effort do you need to maintain an application like Blueprint? That entirely depends on how much you depend on the base JHipster application. So if you have, if you're creating an application that has a lot of dependencies on the base, like a Kotlin Hipster, which means it has a lot of dependency on the back end of the current application. If you're creating something like that, then you have to put in a lot of effort to maintain that particular stuff. But if you're creating something like Vue.js, which has a slight disconnect and all those things that can make your application to run as long as it has a connectivity and things like that, then I think it's much more easier to do with. But Vue.js, again, it's much more complex because the front end that we're creating is a huge chunk of thing that we have there. We have to create that stuff. But if you're doing like small manipulation, like if you're just adding your custom LDAP authentication, or you're just adding some custom elements to your application for serving your clients and things like that, then Blueprint will make it much more simpler for you to run, and it's much more less effort that you have to put in.
Is it possible to use more than one blueprint while generating application?
That's currently in discussion, but I don't think currently.
We are currently working on that, so the idea would be to have support multiple blueprints. So that's something we are working on.
Yes, that's currently in discussion. There is an open issue in the project, but in the future you might be able to use it. That's a question. Please raise.
Yes,
that you do not have any Java file anymore in the cookie when you generate an application of the process. I used to use the generator, and I remember that there were still some Java files that were not converted to Kotlin. Now, have you converted all the Java files from?
Yes. So currently we have converted all the Java files. The initial strategy that we took was like just to convert certain parts of your application and just to have that one particular stuff where you add in Kotlin support inside the pom.xml and also or inside the Gradle. So that's the only thing that I was targeting. But then like since everybody wanted to have a full-fledged Kotlin solution, so we moved in that direction and created a full-fledged Kotlin solution. There was a guy called Peebles by his GitHub name, and he kind of really helped out in achieving that entire stuff. Yeah.
Now you have to maintain.
Yes. So now we have to run at the speed in which the main JHipster runs. But again, like since we have the entire application based on Kotlin, things like functional bean definitions will be added into the system much more quicker, and we can have our own plan of doing these things. Yes. I think currently we have 4 or 5 blueprints. One is Kotlin, Vue.js, .NET, and someone is making of Node.js. And there was talks of doing PHP. We have 5 blueprints now, which might increase in the future. But for now, we just have 5. We might add them in our basic website, our jhipster.tech website. And
Currently, we do have a marketplace where
yeah, that's more on plugins, right?
You don't need a registry because you're not going to consume them directly. They're just NPM packages. You consume them from India, but we do have a marketplace where these are listed. If you add some keywords in your package JSON, it automatically gets listed in the marketplace. That's like a plugin website, web page on.
Yes.
If you want to create a blueprint that changes, for instance, the anchor line that's coming out of it, the front end, wants to do something about an entity, let's say one of the properties of the entity should be linked to the detail page, how could a blueprint access or get that information out of the JDL? Because there's no place in the JDL for annotations. Would you have to leave a comment in the JDL and then pass that comment in the blueprint and say, okay, that's the field that
Okay, there are 2 things to it. One is like JDL doesn't have a comment. The reason why it doesn't have a comment which blueprint points to, because all the things are encoded in the EORC JSON file that is created by the application. So when you run your JDL, JHipster import JDL, inside a function, inside an application that is generated as a blueprint, it obviously goes and connects via the blueprint, which makes it really simple for you. So you just have to write your logic inside the blueprint, and it kind of takes it, that logic automatically. One thing. Number 2 is, since you're creating everything, so all those entity changes that you want to do on the particular Java side or on some other side of the application, what you can just do is like you can use the basic extension here that I shown. Just use the object spread, basic extension, and the only particular file where you want to add something, you can either parse and add a string inside it. If it has a needle, you can use the needle to add the string inside that stuff, or the code inside that stuff. That kind of helps you out to do that stuff. That's why the Kotlin Hipster has 2 or 3 ways of doing the entire thing. Any more questions? Yes. Sorry? Oh, you mean upgrade a project that is generated by a blueprint? Okay, the process to upgrade a project that's generated by blueprint is again JHipster upgrade or the blueprints command upgrade. That's it. Basically, you can upgrade it just like any JHipster application that you're going to upgrade it. And since you have this version or you have this information encoded on your ORC JSON file, how JHipster works is like it kind of sees the ORC JSON file and it finds out that it's generated by a blueprint, and this entire updating thing happens with the blueprint in the picture. So it automatically happens just how your JHipster application happens. Okay, thanks for the time. Mercy.